We have introduction. This is my uncle, David Jackel. My name is Jonathan Jackel. We're at my father's house, Leonard Jackel, in Aptos, California. Today is Sunday, August 13th, 2006. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, good. I'm going to be asking you questions about your experiences in World War II as a navigator in the Army Air Corp. But I'd like to start off by just asking you for some background information.
Okay. My
Okay.
pleasure.
First of all, why don't you just give us your address where you live now?
Currently live in Florida, Lake Worth, Florida, 6850 10th Avenue North, apartment 110, Lake Worth, Florida, 33467.
Thank you. And when were you born?
April 8th, 1920.
So you're 86, correct?
86.
And where were you born?
I believe I was born, yes, behind the grocery store in Corona, Long Island, Northern Boulevard, someplace on Northern Boulevard, near Flushing Meadow.
Okay, and I know this has nothing to do with your experience in combat, but just briefly, why were you born in the back of a grocery store?
I think because the people at that time, my parents included, European Jews, came here with really nothing. And my father's basic experience was as an egg candle. That's a person who looks at an egg, at an egg, to determine whether it's fresh or not. And he did that. And allied to that, he thought he would do okay in the food business. And we lived behind the store in Corona, Long Island.
And then you ended up in the food business too,
And
right?
I ended up in the food business too. I did too.
When did you graduate from high school?
1936. Hold it. Can that be right? Yes.
So you had been
1936. So I was 16.
Okay. And did you go to college?
Yes, I did.
Where did you go to college?
At New York University, downtown, night school, evening school, took a commercial course, and finished in 1941.
And when did you enter the military?
Sometime in December 1942.
So it was about a year and a half between your college graduation and entering the military?
Yeah.
Okay.
In between that sometime, Hermine and I, my wife, were married.
And what did you do for work during that time?
During that time, I think I worked in my father's business, if memory serves me correctly.
So what led you to, or I should ask you, what resulted in you joining the military?
Why did I join the military?
Correct.
This is probably in 1943, or maybe even in 1942, after Pearl Harbor. Hermine and I were driving up in New York State near Bear Mountain, and we heard about the bombing at Pearl Harbor, and we all became very, very, I can't say excited about it, but surprised by it. And I got these feelings of patriotism, got to join up, got to be part of it, and so I went and tried to join the Air Force, but at the time I was really dreadfully out of shape, probably 50 pounds overweight, and with probably a tendency toward high blood pressure. And as I said, try to join up, and they turned me down.
How tall were you then?
6'2".
And how much did you weigh?
I weighed about 240. Dreadfully out of shape.
So they wouldn't take you?
They would not take me.
Okay. So what did you do?
They weren't hard up yet.
What did you do? So how did you end up in the military?
Well, I was actually drafted.
When was that?
I think it was in 1942.
And where?
December of 42.
Where did you have your training?
My indoctrination into the wonderful world of the military was in Fort Dix, New Jersey. Fort Dix, New Jersey, and I will tell you, it was one hell of a difference. First thing they did to us was to assign six people to a tent, a tent, campus tent, in the middle of this vast open field. I think it was December actually, and it began to snow. And we had this frigid temperature, and we are soft, like I said earlier, out of shape, civilians were all assigned to this one tent in Fort Dix. And it was awful, just terrible. So when I got my first leave, no, backtrack a little bit, the whole warmth for this tent and the 5 people in the tent was a single pot-bellied stove, which went out at night, and I'll tell you, was mighty cold. So after the first week in the military, for some reason or other, they let us loose to go home, maybe before we were going to be away for a long time. I came down with a terrible cold. And that's how my military service began, including my first taste of KP, kitchen police for the Army. And
So,
go ahead.
How long were you in Fort Dix?
Maybe the most.
But
This is 1942.
right, and you weren't in the Army Air Corps
No.
at the beginning, correct?
No, this was just the Army. You were drafted in the General Army. And from there, they try to kind of put you where they think you belong. And so naturally, being 6'2" and weighing 250 pounds, they chose me for the Tank Corps.
What did your weight and size have to do with that?
Can't get in, and it's very hard to get in and very hard to get out.
Okay.
Okay. So then we got on this military train, and took maybe 1 week, to go from Fort Dix, New Jersey, to someplace in Texas. What a trip. What a trip.
Why did it take a week?
I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know.
So how long were you, how long was this training for the Tank Corps?
Well, it probably was a year. Probably was a year. And in that year, I realized that this tank corps was not really meant for me, because they really never found the place for me. Not being very mechanical, not really being in shape. And so I became, instead of a part of a tank driver or a tank crew, they put me out as a, what do you call that? That's a, what do you call that? Yeah. I was on the outside of my job. Yes, they called me a liaison corporal. As a liaison corporal, it was your job to tell the tanks where to go, where the enemy was. And your only armament at the time, as a single driver, was a machine gun.
So you would just be in a Jeep?
Just in the Jeep. Just in the Jeep. And you were directing heavily armored tanks to go, you go that way. Really, it was really, for me, an experience.
Why is that?
One day we were out doing a bivouac, on a training mission, and it was at night, really at night, and there was absolutely no light. I had no idea, I'd never done this before in my life, and there I was trying to tell tanks where to go. There was no light at all, no moon, no nothing. How did I find my way? I have no idea.
So how did you end up in the Air Corps?
I realized that I would never be as happy as you could be, or well adjusted as part of a force being in that position. So I decided that I better look for something else. And in my platoon, there was a guy, his name was Bob Foster. He was a lot older than I was, a lot more experienced. Because you have to understand that he was this sheltered Jewish kid from European Jews.
You mean you?
Me. And having no idea of what life is really all about, very innocent. And he began to tell me about the glories of the Air Force. And Bob Foster was really He had no official job as a recruiter, but he was a recruiter for me in the Air Force. I trimmed down 50 pounds or so, maybe 60 pounds or so, while we were in Texas, and took the examinations for the Air Force. 8 carats by the ton because my eyes were a little bit off. It should be 20/20, and I think I may have gotten them down to maybe 20/25 with carrots. Carrots, the main diet. And joined the Air Force. They accepted me. Why did they accept me then instead of previously when I wanted to be a volunteer? Because there wasn't that crushing need at the time for Air Force crew. So,
Well, but you'd gotten yourself into shape too.
well, dropping 50, 60 pounds, you get in shape. My really becoming in shape was the Air Force. They really would be in shape. You have to run and run and run and run. And by the time you're finished, you can run and never stop.
The Air Force or the Army?
Air Force. I did that in the Army as well, but I'm talking now about the Air Force. Because the Air Force basic training is quite good, different, quite good, different.
Where was it?
Good point. Greensboro, North Carolina.
How long did that take?
Maybe 3 months. And from there, they send you to Nashville, Tennessee. There's a center, they used to call it a classification center. And they categorize you as to where you would fit in as part of the flight crew. And according to my testing, it was navigation, which I wanted anyway. And then after that, they send you in Nashville, you take the test, whether you pass or not, you become a navigator and so forth. So I passed. And then they send you to college. In this case, it was Wofford College in South Carolina, Spartanburg, where you learn the ABCs of physics, chemistry, mathematics, which I felt was fairly good at it. I don't know why it just was. And after that, they send you back to the classification center, and you take the test to become an actual navigator. And I became a navigator. And then I went to navigation school in a contract navigation school run by Pan American Airways, who at the time was a premier aircraft, airways flyer.
Wasn't that owned by Hughes?
No.
No?
Hughes was Transworld, TWA.
That was the competition.
Yeah. It was Pan Am, and I was actually taught navigation by a guy from the Merchant Marine. I still remember his name. Douglas McNeil. I remember his name. He taught me navigation. Graduated. We graduated, and the course they trained us for was really for transport, over water travel, celestial navigation. At that time, they had maybe the beginnings of long-range radar, the beginning of it. But they taught us basic navigation, the same navigation that Lincoln used to cross the ocean. Same navigation.
Lincoln?
I'm sorry.
Columbus?
No, Columbus. Who was it? Lindbergh.
Lindbergh, okay.
He spent it, it was a great accomplishment to fly, to do all this by yourself and having to do these computations. I've never read that anywhere.
Never read
that all of the details that Lindbergh had to do in order to reach its destination.
So, do you have any of the training materials left? Did you keep any of that?
No more.
How long did this whole...
Maybe I had a watch once.
Oh, okay.
Had a Navigator kit, which was really nothing. It consists of very, very basic materials. Dividers, slide rule, what they call a navigation computer, was really a slide rule built in a particular way in order for you to determine, you will really use that to determine the wind direction. Wind direction to a flyer, any flyer, is basic. It's a vector. the power that can move the airplane. It's the power. So, what else would you like to know?
Well, how long did all of this training you've described take place?
That was like 3 years, 3 months.
Well, everything from the time you entered the Army,
No.
the Air Corps?
Altogether, it was probably a year, because we arrived in combat, not flying transport like we thought. We arrived in Europe, in Italy, in October of 1944.
So when you got there, or before you got there, did you know you were going to be flying in combat?
Yes.
When did you learn that?
Because they sent us to crew up in Gulfport, Mississippi. How they chose crews, I have no idea.
So how did you feel about it when you learned that you were going to be flying in combat?
I can't say fearful, I say excited. And there really wasn't fear.
You think that was?
You know, I wasn't in fear.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah, because I always felt that I would come through it, always,
And you did.
and I did. So,
So where did they station you in Italy?
a place called Foggia. It's on the east coast, on the Adriatic Sea. One side the Adriatic, bordered by all of those Slavic countries, Greece. Name a couple of the others.
Well, you were on the west coast of the Adriatic.
We were on the west coast.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Thank you for bringing me back.
what was your rank at that time?
First, second lieutenant.
And was that always your rank?
No. You fly a few months and you get time and grade. I don't know whether it had anything to do with how well you did your job, but you became a first lieutenant. That's it. As a first lieutenant, I flew most of my missions.
Did you become a captain at some point?
At the end, in the reserves, in time, I became a captain.
Now,
That was my highest rank.
I know nothing about how the Air Force is divided up in terms of units. What was the unit that you were in?
We belonged to a bomb group, a wing. It was a wing, second bomb wing in Italy, part of the 15th Air Force. And we had all of these all these squadrons, I think there were 4 squadrons, became the second bomb group. And we were in the 96 one.
So how many of these bomb groups were stationed at that
You know what?
base?
I can't answer that.
Was it more than one?
More than one.
How about how many planes did
How
they
many
have?
wings? Oh boy. One time we had a so-called maximum effort going and attacking the Germans from the south coast, over a place called, we used to have a place called, there was a place called, you know what, I really forget. Yugoslavia. It's on the south coast of, right past Italy on the south coast, past the boot.
So what were your accommodations like at the base there?
Interesting question. None. We actually had to construct it ourselves.
Out of what?
Hey boys, here's a tent. Here's a tent. Okay, and go out there and scrounge around, see what you can do about making yourself a floor for this tent. Well, not being very, very handy, I left everything to my blessed co-pilot, because he's the one that seemed most experienced. Bob Davis, Philip Davis. Phil Davis was a guy, very lovely southern guy from Texas. Was really a real, what should I say, a real take it easy guy. Take it easy guy, which in fact was the name of our ship. We named it Take It Easy. Why they say take it easy? Because obviously we couldn't take it easy. So you keep on reminding yourself that you're taking it easy. So let's take it easy. Pilot was Paul Dooley, only 19 years old, volunteer, 19 years old, flying combat, the B-17, with 9 other guys. Kid. They're all kids. But all brave guys,
So how many were there in your crew?
Altogether 10.
And that's what you call a squadron?
No,
No.
that's a basic flight crew
Oh,
for
okay.
flying a B-17.
Okay. And,
Bombardier, navigator, co-pilot, pilot, engineer, flight engineer, radio operator, 2 waist gunners, belly gunner, yeah, turret gunner, underbelly, very hard job, and a tail gunner, 10 people.
what do you mean by, who is it that was underbelly?
I don't know, I don't remember his name, but he's a little guy, he could fit in this ball, it's a tiny ball at the bottom of the fuselage, and he could swing all around, protecting the belly. It's a very crucial job. I don't remember his name, I really apologize for that.
And where did you sit in the plane?
Well, John and I, Bombardier and I, sat up front. He was in the nose, this plastic nose, where he could see everything. And he was the guy who actually was a reason for the mission, namely to drop the bombs, which he did. Which he did. Which the lead Bombardier did. So everybody really, there were like six or nine people in the airplanes in a formation. And we would usually fly deputy, a lead crew and a deputy crew. We usually flew to his right. So there were like 3 planes, 3. 1, 2, 3. Lower echelon, 1, 2, 3. Higher echelon, like 9, usually with a 6. But there were 9 aircraft, consisted of a squadron. And there were four squadrons to a group. And that's how we flew. That's how we attacked the Germans.
Okay. So I think you said you were sitting up front next to the
Right
Bombardier or right behind?
Right behind him. Had a little table. I had no accommodation, no place to sit. I sat at the edge of the table. That's where I sat.
What do you mean, was it a bench or?
No. See that table over there?
Oh,
It was
okay.
smaller than that table. We sat. Most of the time I stood up. I was standing up.
Oh, okay. And where were you in relation to the pilot and co-pilot?
Right in front.
In front of them?
Yeah, the aircraft is built like this. The nose, pilot, sitting above so they could see when they landed and see down. And they were right behind us. Paul Dooley was right behind me, and Phil was to his right, the co-pilot.
Okay. Why did they call it the Flying Fortress?
Was protected all around. Every inch of it was protected by 50 caliber machine guns. They were a very powerful weapon. Even I had 2 on my side. John had 2, which rotated right underneath him, some sort of a rotating dial sort of thing with the guns protruding that way. So. Then there was a radio operator who did not, I don't believe he had a gun because he was on radio. Flight engineer had a top turret gun, top turret on the top. Then there were 2 waist gunners protecting the sides, 1 tail gunner, and of course the crucial spot, the belly, under the belly of the fuselage, where the turret, I guess you call it a turret gun. A lot of time.
So do you think that made it effective?
Oh yeah, every angle was. It depended on how great the gunner was. You know, it depends on how excited or not excited the guy was, and how cool he was. Well, it depends on the person. But basically, it was constructed as a fortress. Every point of attack, every possible point of attack was covered.
Now, when you went on a mission, how high up would you be?
Around 30,000.
Okay. And were there ever any times where you were really under attack by the Germans?
Yes.
Okay. How often did that happen?
Basically, it was once.
Oh, okay.
Just once, because you have to understand, this is the tail end of the war. But every time you went on a mission, you were going over massive flak guns.
Fly guns?
Flak, F-L-A-K.
Guns.
Guns.
What were they?
Well, the cannons from down below, the German cannons. They would try to knock you down and try to hurt you. Many guys, even though I was there toward the end of the war, people were still being killed, even to the day the war ended. almost to the day. Some guy gets a lucky shot, guy's killed. Now, once in a while, you want to look for people that you haven't seen for a while, and you wonder, where the hell were they? And I bought later on, 50 years later, I got this book that our group put out about an enumeration of the missions and the write-down of the missions. And I'm looking for this particular guy who happened to be a Sephardic Jew. His name was Sam Abalafia. While we were there, we became friendly. So where is Sam? And I put it out of my mind. We came 50, 60 years later, I'm looking in the books. Sam Abalafia died on one of the latter-day missions. No, you're here, no, you ain't.
Did you always have the same crew members?
Basically. But once in a while, you had to fill in. And there was a particular crew I was supposed to fly with, one particular mission. For some reason, this Navigator got sick, and I was chosen for whatever reason. Maybe it was random, I don't know. And I couldn't go on the mission. For some reason, I couldn't go on the mission. That mission was blown up. It was blown up. Not in combat, but on takeoff.
But that was not your
right side of, we were really right behind a promontory, a 3,000-foot mountain, and the crew was unfortunate to crash that mountain, and they blew up.
But this wasn't your crew?
It was not my crew. My crew basically was intact, except the tail gunner, who was I hate to use the term, but a roughneck who worked in the oil fields in Texas. A bracket. I'm sorry, he's a bracket. He's a bracket, and spoke, of course, of being this macho guy. He was a lot older than we were. Maybe he could have been almost 40, or looked it. Actually shot himself in the foot by accident. By accident.
So, were you ever fearful before you went up on a mission?
Yeah, you're apprehensive, and you can't eat really, and you have to make sure that all of your bladder is empty, and the rest of it, your intestines are empty and go, because whether you like it or not, you're under stress, enormous stress. You get nervous, and even flight itself will cause rumbles in your stomach. There was no, how should I say it? The blanks are terrible.
Bathroom?
Yeah.
Laboratory?
No, we had no laboratory.
So what did you do if you had to go to the bathroom?
We used condoms. We used the condoms. We filled the condoms and dropped them over Germany. And that's why they lost.
So how many...
Otherwise, I mean, guys who had to go because they were really in fear, deep fear, and they actually used our own maps to throw those down.
So how long did a mission usually take?
10 hours. 10 hours, sometimes longer. We once went on a mission to, wasn't Moscow, mission to Berlin, and this is from Foggia, Italy. It's a long ways.
Round trip?
Long ways. That probably took only 12.
And that's non-stop?
Non-stop.
You don't get the...
No, there's no relief. You know, you're there. And you're cold, you can't believe. You cannot believe. As a navigator, you have to log everything with these two fingers. In order to do that, you have these silk gloves, which they provided. You couldn't wear the other gloves, the heavy gloves, you have to write in. So I kept the silk gloves on all the time, and I kept constantly, warming up like I was way up on some Alps someplace, freezing. And that's really things that people don't talk about.
Was there anything else that you were able to do to keep warm?
Nothing. You have this flight suit. Sorry, there is something you can do. There's a flight suit that you wore. Flight suit is nothing more than an electric blanket fitted to the human frame. And it was either so hot that you couldn't bear it, or so you had to pull it out and cool down and be cold enough to plug it in again to warm yourself up again. All the way up.
Let's take a short break. I think the last thing was that you were telling me about how cold it was. How cold was it?
How cold was it? Actually, I think we recorded maybe 60 degrees below zero.
Was that common or uncommon?
30,000 feet in the winter, be 60 degrees below zero. And you had really all of the things I had told you before, about how we could protect yourself from the cold.
Did anybody ever get frostbite?
Yes. They give you, let's see, you're flying, and you're flying with a parachute harness. You don't put the chute on because it gets in the way. The space is too small. So you have a way of, if you had to get out after being hit, you would have to, your bombardier, the guy who was with you, would have to help you get the little parachute on the harness. And then you would have to try to get out, which would be almost impossible, I swear.
Why is that?
Right near us, where the entryway we used to get in to the aircraft, was a small space, as big as what? Two of these mats. Okay, with you.
We'll hold one up.
Here they are. These two mats.
Can you hold it up?
Oh, sure, yeah. Yeah. The way you get in is the way you thought you could get out. Nuh-uh, as they say in Texas. Double that.
Okay.
Two of those. Okay, so you're trying to figure out in your own mind how you are going to get out of there with heavy jacket, harness, okay, parachute, and a pair of shoes, because you didn't wear shoes, you had to wear boots up there. Boots are shearling boots, supposed to designed to keep you warm, which of course they never did. You had to take off those boots, or if you didn't, then you have to hang on to your shoe with some sort of a clip, a pair of shoes, so in case you had to walk. Of course you had to walk.
Why couldn't you walk in the boots?
Certainly not me. Very bad feet.
Oh, okay.
Very bad feet. The guys in the Air Force overlooked that. Okay.
So, what exactly were your duties?
Well, if you were a lead navigator, like I said, we flew deputy, and you would have to find the target, follow the route to the target, the prescribed route, because things can happen en route that will make you change, and stay on course. How do you stay on course? Well, there's no LORAN, there's no GPI, nothing like that. You have to, looking at the ground, looking at the map, knowing precisely where you were every moment of the time, because if you lost your place, so to speak, and your attention was diverted for some reason, it would be very difficult to pick it up again, especially when you had this high blood pressure induced by, the circumstances. And that's what you had to do. Not only the lead guy, but the deputy guy. You got the ship that was flying behind the lead.
So the lead navigator is the navigator in the lead ship?
Yes.
And
He's the lead guy. He's the one who finds the target. He goes to the target. Getting to the target is, quite another story.
So if you're the deputy navigator,
you would have to
just follow the lead guy?
Follow the lead guy. And the other guys in the formation. Could be 6, could be 9. All following you.
Why did you fly in formation?
For ultimate protection against fighters. And that's why they always required, and always screamed, but tighten up, get in tight. Very, very, very scary. I mean, you're right here. There's this fully armed plane, 10 feet away from you, and you're flying very tight. The tighter you flew, the more protection you had. That's why fighters, when they came in, they'd try to break up the formation, so that single planes would leave, and then you were a sitting duck for a fighter, anytime. One guy could knock it down.
Well, I think you mentioned you got shot at from the ground. Did you ever get shot at from other planes?
No, because we had one attack once, and he decided for some reason or another, it's toward the end of the war, some reason or another, this fighter, I think it was a Focke-Wulf 190 or something, came in straight at me and decided to veer off. Made a slight pass. Could have been he was afraid. Who knows? I don't know. Toward the end of the war, who knows who flew? Kids.
Were you ever the lead navigator?
No. I wasn't a politician.
Okay, you can discuss the trip back from the Azores.
Wait a
Oh,
minute.
wait a minute.
We'll talk.
We'll come to that later.
All right.
Yeah.
And coming to what is you? There was an incident where you were the lead navigator. And I'll ask you about that.
No, that's
That's
later.
later.
That's after the war was over.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff that happened between then and the end. A lot.
So how long were you stationed in Italy?
I think it was about 11 months, I think.
And how many
It
missions?
was terrible, terrible weather.
Really?
Could be weeks before you went up. Weeks.
What do you mean?
The weather was so terrible you couldn't bomb. You want to bomb through clouds with radar? It's very terribly effective. Terrible. And yet, they did it. At times they did it. How accurate were they? I don't know. On the whole, they must have been, because near the end of the war, and looking down on Germany, and looking down particularly at the marshalling yards where they kept all the rails, all the cars. Yeah. You knew that they weren't moving. Nothing moved in Germany toward the end of the war. Nothing. All the cars, all these railroad cars, were all bunched together, stored together in what they called the marshalling yards. And we went after them a lot, even then.
So, but most of the time you were able to see your targets?
Most of the time, when we flew, we could see a target. 100% visibility.
Do you remember what some of your targets were?
Well, some of the targets were Ploesti. It's an oil field in Romania. A lot of losses. I didn't personally fly them, but the people who were there at the time, the early people who took most of the beating, they took a big beating. The early bombers had extraordinary attrition, extraordinary. Lost a lot of people. They're gone. A lot of people. And they did it. We did it in the 15th Air Force, and the other guys attacking from England in the 8th did it as well. We flew during the day, and the British, God bless them, flew at night.
Were those the only two air bases in Europe?
Well, there were other air bases for so-called different kind of targets, like B-25s, were stationed in Corsica, and closer, much closer, because their range was that much shorter than my bomber, the B-17.
So were those the only two bases for the B-17?
Basically, yes. Basically. All over Italy, all, because we had liberators as well, B-24s. They flew low-level bombing. So
What was the difference between the B-17 and the B-24?
B-24 could never get above, with a full load of bombs, B-24 could never get above 20,000 feet.
Why was that?
Therefore, they just couldn't, they didn't have the power. They did not have the power.
Was it bigger or smaller?
It was about the same size, perhaps bigger, but they just could not get up there. 23,000, that was tops. And they took a lot, they took losses, because the lower you are, the easier you are to hit from the ground.
Well, that brings up a question I was going to ask. Were you ever hit?
I was hit.
When was that?
You're always hit. You're always hit with something. You're always hit. One time we did lose an engine. Fortunately, we were high enough so that we didn't need the full 4 engines. I do recall that whatever mission it was, maybe it was a mission to Munich, and the engine, one engine was hit. Munich is near the Alps, and we were high enough, we were probably 25,000, so we could make it home from Munich. And we had it, the shortest way was to go over Switzerland, which I suppose was not allowed, but we went over there anyway. And I do recall this distant mountain, which we at the time were higher than. I was hoping that we would clear the mountain with the 3 engines. you know, because you have 3 engines, you're not going to get up so quickly. We made it back. Sometimes you worry too much.
But did you ever, so it was the plane that got hit?
I was hit once.
Okay, when
I've
was that?
forgotten where. I was hit in the arm. And when it happened, it was really a shocking experience.
How did it happen?
Just flying through flak, which I don't think I can adequately describe it.
What do you mean by flak?
Flak is the puffs the anti-aircraft fire makes when it expands. The damage, the flak, the breaking up of the shell. I was hit by one of those little pieces.
So it actually penetrated the plane?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, the plane is nothing but a thin piece of aluminum.
Mm.
No protection. We had no protection. They give you a little flak suit. They put the flak suit over you. Nothing to protect where it's really important.
So when it's called the Flying Fortress, that just has to do with the artillery.
That's baloney. You know.
Oh, okay.
That's to make you feel good. Maybe that's propaganda for them and the fortress, you know. They get hit plenty. They knock them down plenty.
So what was your injury?
To the arm. It was really fairly minor. To the arm, so it's all right.
Did you need stitching?
No. Yes. Right here. Right.
Do you have a scar at all?
Yeah.
Can we
It's
see
a
it?
scar that big.
Yeah. Did you get a Purple Heart for that?
Yes.
Do you still have it?
Yes.
So what did you do when you weren't going on missions?
I don't think we're finished with missions yet.
Oh, okay. Well, I was asking you how often you went. You told me there would be weeks or even months. where you
Apropos
couldn't-
of that, in between, they came up with the idea, meaning the brass, came up with the idea of sending out single missions, alone over Germany, alone, because the weather was so bad, we really couldn't do effective bombing. That effective, we can't see the targets, not that effective. Yeah. The lead ship had what they call Mickey Navigators, where they actually had radar scope, and they tried to bomb by radar. How effective was it? I don't know. Not very. Anyway, they sent us up. This time we were selected to be one of those alone Greta Garbo missions. I just thought of that. And we did go over one time. We did go over and bomb Vienna. We did go. We couldn't bomb Vienna. We were told not to bomb if you could see the target. To me, it seemed just like harassment.
What do you mean?
You know, just to tell them that we're up there and we're throwing bombs down. They had, I don't know if they knew how many guys were up there, how many people in the formation. It was just one craft from each squadron. They were nowhere near each other. Bombs throwing bombs, targeting all over Middle Europe, Southern Europe. Scary. This one time, the only time, we were supposed to bomb, like I said, Vienna. Also a marshalling yard. We could see that we couldn't, we could not, for some reason we couldn't drop them, I've forgotten. And so we selected an alternate target. Alternate target is a place called Linz, L-I-N-Z. What the target was there, I've forgotten. And by the time we made up our minds to go there, meaning our own crew, it was our decision to make whether we were going to bomb this place or not. It was so clear that we couldn't bomb. We couldn't bomb. We were allowed not to bomb. But that was the official order was not to bomb. But of course they wished that we did bomb. We didn't bomb. One of the most important decisions that I made. Nobody objected.
Oh, that you did or did not bomb?
We did not bomb. We did not bomb. I mean, target, open target, easy target, one single plane. One thing, and knock it down in a minute. So, that was between the pilot and me.
So, are there any other missions that stand out in your mind?
You know, I have so effectively blanked it out. Even when I talked to my bombardier who recently died, John Boyle, he remembers more fragments and more things about individual missions than I can ever recall. And sometimes I wonder if he's not fabricating. I don't remember.
Did you block it out because of the passage of time or because of the trauma?
I would say both. I'd say both. I would say both. You have to understand that, you know, when you're under pressure like that, in a combat mission, under pressure, very difficult to be cool and observe. Very, very difficult. So you did the best you could. I was a navigator, I was logging all this stuff down.
So you mentioned that you had a machine gun that you could use too.
Yes.
Did you ever use it?
No, almost. That's the pilot who chose to leave.
Oh, okay. Were you armed besides that?
And we had a Colt 45.
Did you ever have to use that?
No,
Did you always have it with you?
always. We learned how to use it. We could use it well. It's good. It's a good gun. Fully armed.
So what other targets did you bomb that are known?
You know what? I flew 49 times, 49 missions. I remember maybe that particular mission as a single mission. You want to know? I don't know.
Okay. Didn't you mention once that you accidentally bombed the Russians once?
Yes, I did. I can't remember the circumstance because you have to understand the line's fluid. At the time, the Russians were really advancing, really very well. Where were we? Someplace to the west. So we were there, and we took a target of opportunity, which is really the best we could do at the time. It happened that the Russians happened to be there. It wasn't my fault. We didn't know. We certainly didn't do it on purpose, but we were kind of screamed at. You know what I mean? Kind of.
Were most of
We
your...
didn't take it too seriously.
Oh, okay, good. Well, they're still here. Anyway, were most of your missions over Germany?
Germany, Austria, and northern Italy. We
No.
used to bomb northern Italy because there was a connection between northern Italy and the Brenner and Austria through the Brenner Pass, which is tunneled through the Alps. So we used to bomb it a lot.
When you weren't on missions, did you interact with the local population at all?
Not much.
What?
I know a couple of guys who had love affairs, but you know, wasn't me. I was married. It's a good boy.
What was the
Anybody
attitude
get
of
married?
the
I don't know.
No, what was the attitude of the local people towards the U.S. Army being there?
You know, that's a very good question. That's a good question. I'm not really aware of any bad feelings. I'm aware, now that you bring it up, of a local farmer bringing eggs to sell to us so we can have eggs that be made in your own tent. Because the food there was not the best. You know, as clever as a cook could be, he couldn't do very much with powdered eggs. The one chef made ice cream mix into a milkshake, which wasn't bad.
So was there a local town that you would go into
Yeah, it's
for?
called Foggia. Foggia. Stunk. Just really stunk.
Where is that?
They had open air toilets. Really, really smelled bad. I remember in some of these places where they would hang out the pasta. They would hang it out to dry on clotheslines. I remember that. It was a very, very poor town. Very poor.
Did you go anywhere else in Italy while you were there?
No, I was too, how should I say it? Too pressured to get my missions over quick enough so I could go home. I didn't want to mess around. That's a mistake on my part, because some guys flew to Israel.
You flew to Israel?
I didn't.
You mean to go see it?
Those guys, some guys did. But it didn't last long. It didn't last long. That was when the weather was bad, possibly. And so they chose to say, well, you take this crew and it's your turn to go to Egypt. Some guys did.
Just for R&R?
Just for R&R. Yeah.
Is there anything you did when you went up on a mission to maintain your cool, to stay calm?
Yeah, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. If you don't know what that means, it means, hear, O Israel, the Lord God is one.
Would you just say this to yourself, or would you say it out
To
loud?
myself. I did it all 49, I did it every time.
And was there ever any sort of experiences you had?
You must understand, forgive me, you must understand that when you, from an IP, initial point, before the bomb run, when you started out on the bomb run and approaching the target, you have to remember that every target, every important target, was very well defended by German guns, very well. And so every target, in that sense, was the same, because there would be this shower of fragments from flak, from the anti-aircraft. Shower. You felt, and they looked so harmless, harmless. You could walk out, you felt you could walk out on it. It was so thick, so together. Every time. You cowered, you pulled yourself in so you wouldn't be hit. You know what I mean? Really pulled yourself in tight and prayed. And you had this covering, this flat suit covering, which covered just the front of your body and the back. Never below the belly button, never. What kind of flak is that? Black vest is that? But you're lucky. If you're lucky, you're lucky.
How do you think being Jewish affected your experiences?
It's a good question. It was one of the fears I had of being shot down and being discovered as a Jew. That was my big fear. Big fear. Never happened.
Did you ever have any problems with any of your fellow soldiers because of being Jewish?
Being Jewish? No. I had the full respect of everyone.
Did you know what was going on in Germany in terms of...
Not at all. Not at all. No way. We knew that there were camps. We knew that there were camps. We did not know what was going on in the camps.
What were your feelings towards the Germans?
I hate.
Say it.
I hate and despise them.
Still?
I cannot go to Germany. I will not go to Germany. Sorry. Never. Never.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to mention
Yeah,
about
there
your
is something.
mission?
There is something. Yes. Two things. At the end of the war, all of the bombers were come together to fly troops home. It was the beginning of the war, and we wanted to get rid of all these guys and send them back and get them back to civilian life as quickly as possible. And so our squadron, as well as many others, began to ferry guys back to the United States. So our mission, where we were supposed to fly back guys from Gioia, Italy, to Marrakech, French Morocco. It was all easy going, war is over. And suddenly, over the Mediterranean, it's building this enormous storm system, enormous. I'm flying with a lieutenant colonel, hotshot colonel. Why they selected me to do this, I don't know, because you're flying alone, and you are the navigator, you are the guy. So he took it upon himself, without consulting anyone, that he's going to divert the aircraft from what he saw as a looming storm, to the left, so we could get to our destination, Marrakech. 2 hours later, without saying anything to anyone, he asked me, he says, "Pilot to Navigator, can you tell me where we are?" Where we are, I have no idea where we are, because we're over the Atlas Mountains. You have a map of the Atlas Mountains with a lot of blue spots indicating pools. I guess you call them glacier things, leftovers.
Where are the Atlas
The
Mountains?
Atlas Mountains in northern Africa. Okay. And so you look at a map, and you can't really distinguish one peak from another. You really cannot. And so I, being very cagey, said to the pilot, "We are 2 hours from destination, 2 hours west of the airport," which roughly I figured we were. We were. And that was it. We came in very nicely and landed. But I did not really know where I was. I had no idea. No idea. So a little lie. A little lie. Other mission, however, was different. The other mission came when we, our crew, or selected to bring a B-17 back to the United States from, once again, Joy, Italy. It's like in the south central part of Italy. And we made the same trip to Marrakech without incident. We came, we saw, we landed, we slept, we took off the next day, Marrakech, to the Azores. The Azores are a cluster of islands in the middle of the Atlantic, kind of a little off center of the middle of the Atlantic. And we landed there. No problem. No problem. Next day, take off from the Azores. And we're flying an hour out. Destination from the Azores is to, gee, I can't think of the name, but I'm going to say Labrador. It wasn't actually Labrador, but someplace near there. An hour out, it's your custom as a navigator to wherever you can get a real fix, an actual real fix, not a star fix, not a radio fix, not a DR, dead reckoning fix, but a real fix. Namely, some piece of land that you can say, I'm over that piece of land. So, I look down at my map, and I see my map does not match the mass that I see below us. And I say, well, what's that all about? I mean, I began to feel insecure about as a navigator. But having been trained as a celestial navigator, I had some idea about overwater flying. And we were overwater flying. And so I decided that I'm going to use this, what they called a, kind of like a mechanical sundial, which they mount in the plastic dome above me. And when I was able to use that, and by the way, I had one lesson in the use of that thing a year before then. Never used it before, and never again. And actually mounted it up, and I'm not very mechanical, but I managed anyway. And found out that that compass that I was using, real steady compass, was off maybe 30, 35 degrees. And I said, you know what? This is madness. You know what, it can take you in 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, until the end of your gasoline supply. That can take you God knows where. And I still have flashes of what could have happened. Never did. Why I was able to do that, I don't know. I just don't know. Why I was able to come to that decision, to check the compass, I don't know. At this time, so what choice did you have? But you know, when you start getting pumped up, thinking clearly is hard. Okay. So I prevailed upon the crew to go back to the place because we did not pass the point of no return. That's what they use that frame of reference. When you pass the point where you don't have enough fuel to take you back, therefore you have to continue your journey. We went back. We land. We go to the check-in with the so-called, the guy who's ever been on duty. He happened to be a navigator. He said to me, we can't. I told him why. He said, come back for that. Come back for that. Why don't you go on like it's nothing? You know what? Later in my life, I found out that there are airliners do that today. They do that today. With all the sophisticated stuff that they have, they do it today. Furthermore, there are people who become so confident about their ability and about it's nothing that colonel I flew with that time to Marrakech, he actually went down in the water on such a mission. He actually died, that guy, with some general. Hear that? Mm-hmm. Okay, one of my good decisions.
Yeah, let's pause. In summary, can you just tell us how you feel overall about your experience in the war?
I will tell you that my experience, and according to what I've heard others as well, is what your own feelings about having not done as well, or as, better word, heroic, as you felt you could have been. This is not to say that it's not a very satisfying war record, but you always have this feeling that you could have been a John Wayne, which, you know, was very rare to be John Wayne. And I think that leaves you feeling inadequate. You know, but it's not, you know, it isn't realistic, but it leaves you feeling inadequate. You have to deal with that.
Is that still something that bothers you?
Oh, yes. Yeah, well, I'm getting, you know, I'm 86, so sooner or later you got to get a little smart.
Okay, well, thanks a lot. Maybe we'll do this again some other time.
Okay.
All right?
You bet.
Goodbye.
Bye.